All right, hey gang, I think we're going to get started here. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Awesome turnout. Our events this year are really selling out, so it's great to see so much enthusiasm about water. I am Paige McFarland. I am the Water Efficiency Coordinator for Highlands Ranch Water. So I've been with the district for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was a public horticulturist for a long time. So if you ever want to talk plants, I'm your girl for that. This is our Peaks to Pints presentation. So this is essentially our water supply presentation, where our water comes from, how it gets from the mountains all the way down to coming out your tap. This is the 5th year that we've done this presentation. It's my 4th year doing it. We usually do it a little bit later in the season, but we thought maybe just with the way conditions are going right now, folks might have some questions. So we're just gonna kick this off now. So who is Highlands Ranch Water? If you've heard my presentations before, you know the spiel, but I got to give it because we are kind of a unique community here. So Highlands Ranch was established in 1979. The Mission Viejo Development Company purchased the parcel of Highlands Ranch, and then they created the Mission Viejo Water and Sanitation District in 1980 to meet the water and wastewater needs of the community. 1984, we changed our name to Centennial Water, and then in 2025, we finally made the change to Highlands Ranch Water, which we're so excited about. I think this alleviates a lot of confusion for our customers, as well as folks who live in the city of Centennial. We are a Title 32 special district in Colorado. If you're not familiar with special districts, we are a form of local government. We are a nonprofit, so every charge you see on your water bill, that goes right back into our infrastructure, our staff, maintaining all of that, our capital improvement projects. We are funded by water rates only. We do not collect property taxes. We don't have a mill levy, anything like that. It's just those water rates that fund our organization. We're governed by a 5-member board. So for about the first 40 years of our organization, we were a developer board. In 2022, we had our first elections, and we brought on 2 citizen-elected directors to our board. And as of 2023, we are now a fully citizen-elected board. We do elections for the water board every 2 years, I believe. So we'll be doing another election in 2027. If you're interested, anybody who owns property in our service area can run for the water board. We'll have 3 seats become available again in 2027. So we deliver 4.5 billion gallons of potable water annually to the communities of Highlands Ranch, Solstice, and parts of northern Douglas County. So Solstice, if you're not familiar, looking at this map here, we've got the big blue area, that's Highlands Ranch. The orange staggered areas, that's parts of northern Douglas County we serve. And then this kind of weird blob that's out away from everything else, that's the Solstice community, which is the last part of our community to be built. So I know this probably looks like new development, but actually this land was part of the original parcel that was purchased by Mission Viejo back in the late 70s. It has always been factored into our water resources plan. We always knew it was going to be developed and we'd have to provide water for these folks. So we are very secure, in our water resources plan, being able to provide this community with water. You're just seeing the completion of a 40-year plan. It's kind of the last puzzle piece, last bit of development for the master plan community. We are also your wastewater provider. So a lot of metro area water providers actually contract out their wastewater treatment to Metro Water Recovery. So big folks like Aurora and Denver, they have Metro Water Recovery do their wastewater operations. We do it in-house. So we've got a surface water treatment plant, a wastewater treatment plant. We have a lab in-house. We do as much in-house here as we possibly can. And then we just have these 2 wheeling agreements with Roxborough Water and Sanitation District and Castle Pines North. We are not their water provider. We just wheel them their water. So they have their own water supply. They just use our infrastructure to get it to them. I always like to share this chart when I give presentations just to get you thinking about how we're using water as we're going through all of this tonight. So this is from a 5-year analysis, water use of our community from 2017 to 2021. You can see single family home users use nearly 70% of our water supply. So we are a highly residential community. We have over 30,000 single family home accounts and probably less than 1,000 commercial accounts. So we are highly residential. Our commercial users at 8%, that's going to be indoor water use for non-residents. So think like a hospital or a rec center pool, something like that. irrigation only users at 12% of our water supply. This is our second largest water user class. So for our non-residential customers, they have to have a separate meter for their indoor use and their outdoor use. So think of this irrigation only as a golf course or an HOA common area or landscaping at an apartment building. That's going to be our irrigation only. Metro District irrigation, this is the irrigation for our parks and parkways. They use 5 to 6% of our supply each year. They are our largest customer. And then at 5%, we have multifamily users. So this is indoor water use at apartment buildings. All right, so we're going to get back to the basics here with Colorado water law. I think at this point, probably most of us have some kind of idea of how water law works in Colorado, right? We've seen the Colorado River Basin stuff with that in the news a lot the past few years. But basically, it comes down to prior appropriation in Colorado and a lot of the western United States. So first in time, first in right, whoever got there first has the right to use the water. Water use must be reasonable and beneficial. So municipal, agriculture, industrial, these are all things that we would consider reasonable and beneficial. Outdoor irrigation is included in that. However, this word reasonable is really key, right? So during a severe drought situation, we might no longer consider outdoor irrigation to be reasonable. So things can change depending on our conditions. The state does estimate that a third of irrigated land could be dried up to meet municipal demand in the next 25 years. And Highlands Ranch, we're kind of in a unique situation when it comes to planning for the future because our community is nearly built out. We're like 99% built out. We know the amount of folks that we're going to have to provide water for, unlike these other water providers such as Aurora, Denver, Castle Rock, Parker, Colorado Springs. All these folks are anticipating exponential growth in the next 20 years, and we are not. So we're pretty secure in our situation. And then groundwater rights and surface water rights are appropriated through separate court systems. So tonight we're going to talk about surface water and groundwater because we call it a conjunctive use system. We utilize both groundwater and surface water to meet our community's demand. We are mostly surface water. Surface water is ideally what you want to have as a water provider because we consider surface water to be renewable. So the surface water is our snow melt, our rivers, our lakes, our streams that we divert into our reservoirs. That is our surface water. So I'm going to talk about surface water first, and then we'll dive into groundwater as well. We are a headwater state in Colorado. This means all of the rivers in our state start here and they flow out of our state. So this image right here, this is from the Office of the State Engineer. This has been around for a long time, but it's kind of just showing you our 7 different river basins and the main rivers in those basins. I think there's something like 135 rivers in Colorado, all of which flow out of it. Over 60% of the water in our rivers does flow out of state. We are legally required to send that water elsewhere. So there's 9 compacts in place that require us to send water to other states and sometimes Mexico. So in water resources, when we're talking about huge quantities of water, we talk in terms of acre feet. So this is a measurement of water. So if you're not familiar with what an acre foot of water is, imagine a football field 1 foot deep and then flood that with water. And so for our community, how we use water, 1 acre foot of water would be enough to provide water for 3 single-family homes for a year. So we've got all this water, we've got our water rights. What do we do with it? Well, we got to have storage. So we have 4 reservoirs where we store water. This first one here is our South Platte Reservoir. So this one we own. We built it in 2008, 6,400 acre feet of storage in here. All of these pictures of the reservoir were taken in 2023 when everything was nice and full, looking really pretty. So ideally, this is what we like to see when we look at a reservoir. This South Platte Reservoir you can see from 470. So if you hop on 470 at Santa Fe and you're heading west, the South Platte Reservoir is going to be on your right. Chatfield's going to be on your left. McClellan Reservoir. So this one you've probably driven past a million times. If you're going west on County Line Road, before you get to Santa Fe, kind of like where the connect is on County Line and Kendra Castillo Way, to your right, if you're going west, is going to be McClellan Reservoir. So that is owned by the city of Englewood. So we lease storage in that reservoir, and we also lease water from the city of Englewood as well. And I'll talk about those leases in just a couple slides. We lease 65% of the total volume for that reservoir. One reservoir we have that you might not know about is the James Tingle Reservoir. So this reservoir is up in Park County. We built it in collaboration with the Center of Colorado Water and Sanitation District. So they're one of the water providers for folks up in Park County. So we did this in collaboration. It's not a huge reservoir. It's only 400 acre feet, and we have the right to store in 50% of that. We do have a person that works there full-time operating that for us. We came to this reservoir by buying some water rights for Michigan Creek. So there was a farm up there years ago that we bought rights from to pull water off Michigan Creek and fill this reservoir. How do we get it down here to Highlands Ranch? So fortunately, we didn't really have to build, besides the reservoir, a bunch of additional infrastructure to get that water down here. There's no pipeline or anything like that. When we release the water into Michigan Creek flows into Tarryall Creek, and that is a tributary to the South Platte River. So that's how it gets down here. Basically, it might be I'm going to oversimplify this, but basically we might say to the state engineer's office, hey, we're going to release 20 acre feet of water over the next week. And in return, we're going to pull a 20 acre feet of water out of Chatfield this week. So oversimplification, but technically, that's how it kind of works when we do that. And that's how we get the water down here. Chatfield, this is our big one. We all know this one. I'm a big paddleboarder, so I've spent a lot of time here during the summer. Obviously, this is not our reservoir. So we were a part of the Chatfield reallocation project. And so this was a project that started many years ago. It actually took over 20 years for the Chatfield reallocation project to be completed. But this was a collaboration between the federal government, state government, and I think somewhere around 10 or 12 water providers in the metro area. What we wanted to do was increase the storage capacity of Chatfield so that we could store water there. What they did to achieve that is they raised the level of Chatfield by 12 feet. And so that increased the holding capacity of a little over 20,000 acre feet. We did have to get approval from the federal government for this. So Chatfield, if you don't know, is owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's federally owned. The original purpose for the Chatfield Reservoir is flood control for the metro area. So we had to maintain that original purpose of it to do this project. A lot of collaboration here. We also had to work with some nonprofit organizations as well to try to kind of minimize any ecological impact to stuff. If you've been to Chatfield, there's a lot of bird habitat there. It's also home to an endangered field mouse. So we wanted to make sure that we preserved as much of that habitat as possible and did some mitigation in other areas of the park. But in 2021, we did get authorized to store water here, and then it remained empty for a few years until 2023 came along, which, as you know from that rain, every reservoir, every river, it was all overflowing. So this was a really important project for us. You might remember that we went into drought restriction in July of 2022. The reason we were able to come out of drought restriction is because of this investment in Chatfield Reservoir, and it's also kept us out of having to go in restriction for the past 2 years. So this was huge, almost doubled our surface water storage supply. We invested about $50 million into this project, but if you consider the fact that an acre foot of water market price right now is like $30,000 to $50,000 per acre foot, we ended up spending about $8,000 per acre foot on this project when we came away with that. So it was a pretty good deal for us. All right, so here's the surface water leases I was talking about. When it comes to our surface water, we lease about 50% of our water from other providers, and we own about 50% of our surface water. So two that I just wanted to call your attention to is the City of Englewood leases. We lease a huge chunk of our surface water supply from them. So Englewood is a unique water provider in Colorado in that they are water rich. When they were first building up, they originally anticipated to be much larger than they currently were. So they bought up all these senior water rights. And then kind of like Denver and Centennial and Highlands Ranch, we all built up around them to the point where they can only expand vertically now. So they actually have way more water than they need. And they're like, we want to sell this to someone. And we're like, please sell it to us. The leases are 20-year contracts. And at this point, we've renewed them a handful of times. But it's an important relationship for both of us, a good mutual benefit for both water providers in this instance. And then we have the WISE project. So this is Water Infrastructure and Supply Efficiency Project. And this is something a bunch of us South Metro water providers do and participate in together. This is one of the ways that water providers are working together to try to get more renewable surface water down to Douglas County water providers. So lots of folks participate in it. We do, Castle Rock, Sterling Ranch, Parker, most of us here in Douglas County participate in the WISE program. And this is an agreement where Denver and Aurora will send us their reusable effluent. And what that means is that's water that's been through their supply system. It's been treated again by Metro Water Recovery back to a potable level, and then they will send it to us. So that's why we normally say we don't really get any water from like the Colorado River. We are mostly South Platte, but like some water that you could technically say would be coming from the Colorado River would be the result of like the WISE program, that reusable effluent. All right, so we've got all this water in our reservoirs. Now we have to treat it, because you definitely don't want to drink straight out of the South Platte River. So this is a drone shot from a couple years ago of our water treatment facility. So this is over on Plaza. There's Plaza Drive right there. And just over that body of water, that's McClellan Reservoir, just to give you an idea of where you are. But water comes out of our reservoirs, and it comes into this body of water right here called our forebay. Water usually doesn't stay in there for more than 24 hours, but that's essentially where the treatment process starts, because at that point, solids are starting to settle out of the water. It then kind of moves into this building right here, and we go through a series of treatment processes where, again, we're adding in some chemicals and things that's helping the sediment in the water kind of cling together and build up, become heavy, and so then it drops out of the water. Once that's been done, we move on to our filtration process, which is in this building, and then after filtration, we disinfect, and then it goes out to our community. If you are interested, we offer tours of our water treatment facility and our wastewater treatment facility. You can head to our website and sign up for one of those. It's really interesting stuff. If you've never looked at it. We are in the process of a multi-year upgrade at our water treatment facility. So some of the things that we're doing with that is we put in a new chemical building. We got off chlorine gas for disinfectant. So for a lot of water providers, pretty common. I know it sounds nasty, but chlorine gas is a pretty common disinfection treatment for water. But we wanted to get away from that just for the safety of our staff and the safety for everyone. So we've moved away from the chlorine gas. That was part of the upgrade. And then kind of the biggest thing is we wanted to increase the capacity of our surface water treatment plant. And what I mean by that is the amount of water that we are able to treat and send out to the community in a single day. So in the summertime, our community, like peak irrigation season, our daily demand is anywhere from 30 to 35 million gallons. We don't often hit 35 million gallons, but we have in the past. And for a long time, the capacity of our treatment system was only 25 million gallons. So we would have to supplement with groundwater to meet that demand. So in the upgrades, we're already up to like being able to process 30 million gallons per day. So we're really happy with that. And we hope to complete this project by 2030. At that time, the capacity will be 40 million gallons per day. After the plant, it goes off into our distribution and some of our tanks. We have over 450 miles of potable water line in our community to get that water to your house. They go to tanks around the community. One that you might be familiar with is this Tanks skate park. The skate park is literally on top of our water tanks. It's pretty cool. And then a couple summers ago, me and my interns actually got the opportunity to go inside one of the tanks while it was being drained and cleaned for maintenance and stuff. That's what they look like on the inside. It's a little creepy, but it is kind of cool when you think about it when you're in there. So yeah, a unique experience. Okay, so I've touched on this a little bit as we've talked about treatment and we've talked about water supply, but one of the reasons we really push water conservation is that we want to be as little reliant on groundwater as we possibly can. So in Colorado, groundwater is considered non-renewable. Groundwater is not renewable everywhere in every part of the country, but it is here just due to our climate. It's also being pumped out a lot faster than it can be replaced. It's unlikely that it would be replaced in our lifetime, so we consider it non-renewable here. We utilize a conjunctive use system, so our average in terms of meeting community demand over the past 30 years has been 85% surface water, 15% groundwater. Looking at the past few years, we're really inching much closer to like 90%, 10%. So we're really happy with that. A lot of Douglas County water providers are like 70% groundwater, maybe even entirely groundwater. So we really take getting off that groundwater reliance really seriously. All right, so now the groundwater questions. Okay, so this is a bird's eye view of what these groundwater aquifer systems look like right beneath our feet. This image is pointing out to you the 4 aquifers that are underneath us. So the first is the Dawson Aquifer. We don't pull any water out of the Dawson Aquifer, but we do have wells drilled into the Denver, Arapahoe, and the Laramie Fox Hills Aquifer, so 3 aquifers. On the right here, this one is breaking it up by county, so you can see how vast this basin aquifer system is, right? So our biggest one, the Laramie Fox Hills Aquifer, goes from Greeley all the way down to Colorado Springs. So it's very big. These are bedrock aquifers, and they're kind of layered on top of each other like a cake. They get bigger as they go down. And so when we drill a well into an aquifer, we're extracting the water out of the pore spaces in the rock. So when you drill a well, imagine sticking a straw into wet sand. So that's kind of what we're doing with the aquifer system. In 1960, our Colorado state legislation approved water providers to be able to drill into the aquifer system, knowing that it was a non-renewable resource. So they knew this, but they're like, we're going to prove this to give the next generation some time to build up infrastructure, reservoirs, things like that, to get the state on renewable water fully. So this was kind of just like giving us a little time to get things together. They limit the amount of water you can take out of an aquifer each year, depending on your groundwater rights. And so the intention was to make this groundwater last for 100 years. In recent history, we are kind of leaning towards it not lasting for 100 years, all the more reason to just get off the groundwater. So we've got 39 active wells around the community. You have probably driven by some and not even realized it. And then we have 2 groundwater treatment plants. So on average, we only use 11% of what we are legally allowed to pump each year. We could, if we wanted to, we have the right to pump over 17,000 acre feet per year, which would be enough to meet the demand for the entire community for a year. Obviously, we don't want to do that, but if we ever ended up in a situation where we had to fully go on groundwater for a year, we would be more than able to meet the demand. Other reasons we use groundwater, so limited water treatment plant capacity, I touched on that already. We do something cool called aquifer storage and recovery. So times where you might have like excess water, like in 2023, when we had incredible rains, right? And it was what we call free river for over 30 days. That is when anybody can just take water off the river. Like it doesn't matter. There is just so much excess. There's plenty to go around. So in a situation like that, we might pump water back down into the aquifer. And the advantage of pumping it back into the aquifer is when you have water in a reservoir, you're going to lose like 6 to 7% of the water off the surface of that reservoir due to evaporation in a year. So imagine you have a 20,000 acre foot reservoir, you're going to lose 1,500 to 2,000 acre feet of water just from evaporation. So if you put it back down in the aquifer, you don't have to worry about that. And also, it's not booked against our groundwater rights. So anything we put down there, we also have the right to pull back out with no effect on any of our other rights. The downside of ASR is that it is pretty expensive, right? So we have to treat the water before it goes into the aquifer. We have to treat it when it comes back out. And overall, it's just generally more expensive to provide you guys with groundwater, right? So we estimate 40% more to provide you with groundwater than surface water, because just think about all the energy it takes to pump water up out of the aquifer, send it back down. We have lots of infrastructure that we have to maintain. So there's a lot of embedded cost with groundwater that we don't have as much with surface water. By the way, this picture, this is what one of our well sites looks like. And if you're like, why do you have such a beautiful swath of green grass at your well site? That's not very water conservation minded. This is actually a grass called Tahoma 31, and it reduces water use by 50 to 70%. So this is something that we will rebate in our turf replacement program. So we put this in at a couple well sites where we did have a significant amount of turf grass in 2023. So if you want to replace your lawn with a low water option, this is one that's out there. But they kind of, they just look like little almost residential-like lots, so maybe a little bit of turf, a little bit of old school landscaping that was popular like 20 years ago, and then you'll have a little pump house right there, and that's just, where all the equipment is. So that's what they look like. If you drive by and see something like that, and you don't see an actual house on it, it's probably our well site. This chart, I just wanted to show you guys the impact that dry years do have on our groundwater use. So this chart, the blue is our surface water that we're using. The green color, that's our groundwater. And so you can see a lot of blue on there, which is awesome, mostly surface water. But this one where you can probably guess, this one bar that's really tall, that's 2002, right? Historic drought year for all of Colorado. So 41% of our demand that year was supplied with groundwater. That's also the year that we used the most recovery we've ever used. So the recovery is water that we've pumped down into the aquifer with ASR, and then we took it back out. 2013 and 2022, these were also significant years of groundwater use, right? So nearly double the amount of groundwater we normally use during those drought years. Everybody's favorite part, so the financial impact of supplying water. We've had rates go up a little more than usual in the past few years. We've also introduced a new infrastructure improvement fee. A lot of this has to do with our capital plans. We just completed a project at our wastewater treatment facility, and we're a few years into a master plan for our surface water treatment facility. A lot of it is just old equipment that, it went in 40 years ago. It's time for it to be updated. There are also regulations put out by the federal and state governments that we have to meet that requires new infrastructure. So that does result in raising rates at times. We no longer have tap fees as a reliable form of revenue. So a lot of these communities that are expanding rapidly, they're making a lot of money off of tap fees. So that's for each home that goes in has to have a tap. And a tap, depending on the community you're in, is anywhere from $15,000 to $40,000. So for communities that are expanding rapidly, there's a lot of money coming in from tap fees. As we are nearly built out, we don't have access to that revenue anymore. I mentioned this earlier, but the market price for water currently ranges from $30,000 to $50,000 per acre foot. It doesn't include the cost to build that storage. It doesn't include the cost to, oftentimes if you take a water right, say you buy from a farm, you've then got to go to court and get that reappropriated for municipal use. So none of that gets factored into this cost per acre foot of water. It's quite expensive, and it's also not very often that senior water rights become available. If you have senior water rights, you're probably not going to want to sell them. If anything were to ever come available, part of your bill also goes to our water acquisition fund. So if surface water ever became available, we could go after that. Even with our rate increases in the past couple of years, this is just a comparison of some other providers in our area. This is us right here in the dark blue, so you can still see we're about the same or a little bit lower than folks here, significantly lower than some other places. Littleton is the only one that's lower than us. They're under Denver Water. So it's still pretty reasonable when we factor in what's happening with other communities. We also have that water budget rate structure, which I know you all love so much. But this chart is showing you residential water use from 1995 up to 2022, when we implemented that water budget rate structure that gives each individual an allocation based on their square footage of their property. And we saw an immediate 20% drop in water use. This black line right here is the number of residential taps, so the number of homes going in. Despite that number continuing to rapidly increase, you can see that our community's water use remained low, and then we've kind of plateaued here in the last 10 years. So we're really looking to our customers, both single-family homes and non-residential customers, to help us conserve water. You might have heard the statistic before. This is looking at single-family home uses about 50% of its water each year out on the landscape. So there's a huge opportunity for us to conserve water in the landscape. We have a pretty robust rebate and incentive program. So here we've got a handful: rain sensors, high efficiency nozzles, smart controllers, things that you can purchase and receive a rebate from us if you're looking to make your irrigation more efficient. Our big one is the turf replacement rebate. So if you're interested in this, our previous Max Taps event was all about turf replacement and how to participate in the program, and that is up on our YouTube channel. But this is a program where we are encouraging folks to take out their high water use turf grass and put in either Coloradoscape, which is what these pictures are here, low water perennial trees, shrubs, or we will also rebate if you want to put in that low water turf grass that I showed you in that well site. So we've had this since 2018. We didn't have a lot of participation in the early years, but in 2022, things really kicked off. We're definitely blowing through funding for this rebate this year as well. People are really enthusiastic, which is great to see. So if you're interested, you can come talk to me. You can head to our website. I've got business cards on the table. We do residential and non-residential participants. Average resident is saving about 20,000 gallons per year with this project. That's overall. For our customers who choose the Coloradoscape, they're, after 2 years, actually conserving about 30,000 gallons on average per year, so about a third of your water use with this program. If you want to apply for rebates, again, our website, wealth of information, irrigation equipment, our soil tests. We also have a high efficiency toilet rebate. So if you'd like to do any of those, we just need you to submit a receipt with your application and apply within 90 days of purchase. And for turf replacement, it's a little bit more, couple hurdles there. So you've got to get HRCA approval first and then get our approval. Our process is pretty quick, just a quick review to make sure you have the appropriate plant material, those sorts of things. And then after that, you're free to get going and break ground on your project. So I just wanted to talk also about drought restrictions while I have you here. If you didn't know, on March 30th, our board of directors voted to go into a stage 1 drought restriction. This applies to our outdoor watering schedule. So for residential folks, multifamily, and commercial, those folks are assigned to 2 days per week. If you're single family, your days are based on whether your address ends in an odd or an even number. For our large commercial customers, so think like the Metro District or some HOAs or a golf course. These folks are not on a day restriction because it's just simply not possible given the amount of landscape they have to irrigate for them to stick to a 2-day-a-week schedule. So these folks can water more than 2 days per week, but they have to be 20% under their allocated water budget. I have full faith in our community to meet this reduction goal of 15 to 20% because we already did it once before, right? In 2022, we weren't in drought restriction for very long, maybe only like 7 or 8 weeks of the irrigation season, but everybody across the board, residential, commercial, we came down by 15% and it was awesome. So I have full faith that we can do this again. Some reminders for you. We are encouraging folks to try to delay irrigation, like firing up your automatic system until May 1st, if you can. We're not necessarily out of the woods yet with freezing temperatures. It's Colorado, anything could happen. And then any bit that you can delay really does help preserve our water supply going into likely a very hot summer. You can hand water and use drip irrigation at any time. You are not on a 2-day restriction for those. And then our daytime watering restrictions begin May 1st, and that's just our normal restriction. So normally May 1st to September 30th, no overhead irrigation, so no sprinkler irrigation from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so all that normal stuff still applies. We do have a report water waste form on our website now. So if you want to tattle on your neighbor, head right there. I know a lot of people have been waiting their whole life to do that. So we've already got a lot of submissions coming in. I will tell you, as the person who is responsible for enforcement, we're trying to hold off on enforcement during the month of April because right now it's really just about communicating the message. Your neighbor who is watering every day a week this week might just not know that we're in a drought restriction. I believe you guys all just had postcards hit your mailbox like last week, maybe beginning of this week. So if you have a bothersome neighbor, maybe just try to have a little patience or benefit of the doubt for them in these next couple weeks. Hopefully they get the message with some of the stuff we're doing. And that is That is all I have for you. This is my information. This is a QR code to our rebates and incentives, so it'll take you right to our page if you're interested in. And then we've got some upcoming events that we'd love to see you at. So open house at our wastewater treatment plant. Like I mentioned, we just underwent a bunch of upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant, and now we've got a really cool kind of cutting edge stuff happening there now. So you can head to our website if you want to attend this open house at our wastewater treatment plant, May 21st, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I personally think the wastewater treatment stuff is so interesting, the way they go through those processes, and they use a lot of naturally occurring organisms to do that work, so it's really cool. And then, of course, we have 2 more programs at Max Taps this year. So in July, we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus, May and June, but in July, we'll have an event for smart irrigation. In September, we will have our 45th anniversary trivia, so if you win that, you can get a $100 credit on your water bill. And then South Metro Water Festival. So this is something that was started last year, and this is South Metro Water Providers came together and we put on a festival. It is targeted more towards children, but everyone is welcome, all ages welcome. It's going to be at Civic Green Park, June 17th, 3 to 6 p.m. We will have entertainment, lots of free swag. You can explore our emergency response vehicles. Castle Rock will be there, Parker, East Cherry Creek Valley, they'll all be there representing and wanting to talk to you about water. So maybe put that on your schedule, keep it in mind. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on the difference in water use between a tree in the front yard and the average grass on the front yard?
Say you have a 1,000 square foot front lawn, 1 inch of water on that is going to be 600 gallons. For your tree, it's usually based on the diameter of the tree, but for a tree, I would say 25 gallons per week would be a reasonable estimate. So it is going to be significantly less for the tree. Yeah.
So I think I've seen some of the providers nationally have a system where you can register your account for your water utility and will monitor if you have potential some leaks in the house. Does something like that exist?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about an AMI meter, or sometimes people call them smart water meters, and that gives us as well as the customer the ability to monitor water use. We are in the process of transitioning our service area to AMI meters. We don't fully have everybody on them yet, so we have a significant portion of our indoor commercial, all of our outdoor non-res. So all of those folks, which I think are pretty important because they use significant amount of water, we want to be able to monitor those folks. For our single family homes, we only have about 25% of single family homes on AMI right now. So it is a slow process, it is expensive, and we are starting with our oldest meters in our community first. We have 3 different types of meters in our community, and one of the oldest ones is a walk-up meter. So our guys have to literally walk up to your house to read the meter. So those are being replaced first. It's going to take a while because it's expensive and it's time consuming, but we are moving towards that, absolutely. And once you get one, you can sign up for us. It's called the Ion Water app. So you can track your daily, down to 15 minutes. You can track your water use. You can set a leak alert and be notified of continuous flow. So yeah, it's coming. We're working on it.
Have you seen reduction in those that are on the new system in terms of get rid of the leaks, etc.?
Yes and no. So one of the things we struggle with is getting folks to sign up for that Ion Water app. Obviously, we on our end have the ability to see where leaks are, and we do our best to notify customers of when they have a leak. We do have limited contact information for folks. I would say for our single family home customers, on average, 60% of the people that we notify do fix the leak. And then for the rest, I would say, 2 weeks later, the leak is still persisting. So yeah, the technology is out there and it's really cool. We just need people to kind of take it seriously and engage a little bit more. Yeah, go ahead.
I've got drip irrigation installed in 2 zones in my yard, but I use microsprays as part of the drip. Can I still run that anytime, or is that?
So the micro sprays we don't consider to be drip anymore. The problem is any kind of like overhead irrigation that's spraying like that is just prone to being more wasteful. So we don't consider the micro sprays kind of in the same category as like the spaghetti tubing or the, the inline emitters. So that's, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.